Welcome to TechbrothersIT. In this video, we are going to learn about the tumbling triggers. Now, what is a tumbling trigger? There is a whole lot of information. You can read the documents and all that, but we are going to perform a demo that will clear a lot of concepts. So let's read this a couple of lines for tumbling trigger definition, and then we will move from there. Tumbling windows triggers are type of triggers that fires at periodic time interval from a specific start time while retaining the state. So you can provide some specific time. So maybe you want to start in the past, or you want to maybe just start from now on and keep moving forward to the future. So there are two states you are going to provide: starting and ending. And then tumbling windows are series of a fixed size, a non-overlapping continuous time interval. So once you provide the start time and end time, then you can divide those start and end time between the windows. So you can tell like how many windows you want to create out of that interval that you have between start and end time. A tumbling window trigger has one-to-one relationship with the pipeline and can be referenced only on singular pipeline. So it is a one-to-one that we can understand straightforward. A tumbling trigger is a more heavyweight alternative for scheduled trigger, offering a suite of features for complex scenarios such as dependencies on other tumbling triggers, rerunning a failed job, and set user retry for the pipeline. So these are different features. They are not available in the schedule trigger, and here you have those features available. So they can be depend upon other triggers, or you can rerun the failed job, and then you have retries. You can do that, all those kind of things. And there are tons of other things if you wanna study about them. This whole article is right there, and you can read through. But let's get into demo so I can explain the things, how exactly it work. Now, what we are gonna do in this demo, we are gonna create a table, and it's called customer table. This table will have one of the column called sale data. Now think this is our source table that has maybe 10 years of data or 20 years of data, and we would like to get that historical data to our table called the destination. So that's going to be right there. So I am creating this table first. Let's create this table, and I'm connected to the Azure SQL database. So let me run this whole thing, and now the table is created, and 100 rows are inserted. So let's take a look on the data itself, and right here you can see that I have some old data. So I have data from August 1st, and then I believe I have data for 8 days. So you can see right there, but in your case it's going to have millions of records, or maybe more or less, depends upon your source and your requirements. Now I'm going to go ahead and create this destination table, and that table is created. And next, what we are going to do, we create a store procedure, and here we will define a start date and end date, and then we select the data from the customer table where date is less than or equal to, sorry, greater than, and here we can do greater than equal to or whatever, and then here less than equal to start date and end date. So this store procedure, what this is going to do, this is going to get us data from the customer table depending upon the values we have provided for the start date and end date parameters. Now, if you guys see that in the tumbling trigger, right, we can, uh, let me say tumbling trigger, right, and let me make it a little bigger so you can see. So I have start in my customer table. In my customer table, I have date starting from August 1st, right? And then what happened? I the end date is, and this is my start, and this is my end date. Now, end date is 0808, right? Okay, so now I can provide these start date and end date, and after that, what I can do now, I have to define the window. So here if I will say, oh okay, my window is gonna be 24 hours, right? So what's gonna happen, this between first and 8, it's gonna divide into 7 or 8 days, right, depending on the time or whatever at the time I define. So now if I do 24 hours, so 8 windows will be created, and if I will say 24 hours, then 8 windows will be created. Now when I run this store procedure in the pipeline, what's going to happen? The first time it's going to provide like, okay, that's your first day. Is these 8 windows are going to be like this. So it is going to be 02, then from 02 to the 03, and then keep moving till the 8 comes out, right? So this is how the windows will be defined. Now what happened if somebody say, no, I don't want to be like do a 24 hours window, I want to do maybe 12 hours window. Now what's going to happen now, if you do 12 hours, then 16 windows will be created, and then the time now it's not going to be like 8:1 to 8:02, so not whole for a whole day, it will be between 12 hours, so there would be 16 windows will be created. Now once then what's going to happen once you have your pipeline ready and your tumbling trigger created, it's going to run those 16 windows, and each time the windows are going to, it's going to bring call the store procedure, provide the input value, start date, and date from the trigger, and then we will get the data, and finally we'll load the data. Then next windows will be processed, and next windows will be processed. So this whole thing will happen. Okay, so we are all set here. What we are going to do, we are going to go ahead and create our pipeline and experiment so we can see the things in real. Let's go to the Azure Data Factory here. Let's go to the our author here. I'm going to go ahead and create new pipeline, and I am going to use copy activity. In the copy activity we will use the store procedure, and here go to source new, and then say Azure SQL database. Right there we are going to create a linked service, and I'm selecting my subscription, and I'm selecting my server name, and I'm selecting my database name TBIT DB, provide my username, and then I'm going to provide the password. Okay, test connection, looks good, create. So our source and destination are in the same database, so I don't have to create multiple linked services. So I'm going to use the same linked service in both scenarios, in the source and sink. Okay, here is a table. I do not need to select any table because I'm using a store procedure for our source. So I'm going to go to source here, say store procedure right there, and then in the store procedure I will say, let me refresh and select. Okay, maybe I did not create the store procedure. I was showing you definition, but I did not create it. Okay, now I have created the store procedure, and this looks good. I gotta go back, and now I refresh, and it should show me store procedure PRC load customer, and then next I'm gonna hit on import parameters, and it's gonna bring me two parameters right here. So those parameters are ready, and next I will do a couple of things here. Let's do this, finish the first sync, and then we'll come back to the parameters. Now select the sync, and here on the sync you're gonna go ahead and find your Azure SQL. So Azure Database SQL here, select the link service, and then you're gonna go and click on tables, and here is our table. So we are using customer destination table, and we do not have to import schema or anything because our table has the same definition of our source and destination. So we are all good. We do not have to map anything in the mapping because the column names are exactly the same. Now our source is ready, and we know that we have two parameters that we have to pass. So I'm going to go on the pipeline level and create those parameters. Here I'm going to click anywhere here, and then once I click on this white canvas here, the parameters appear. These are pipeline parameters. I'm going to say P start date, that means the pipeline parameter, and then hit new and see P end date. So I can do end start date and end date here. Okay, so these are my parameters on the pipeline, and I need to go back to the copy activity, and here I'm going to map them. So p end date first, so it is the p end date. So my source parameters are being mapped now to our pipeline parameters. So now we are all good here, and we can do one thing. We can go and create a tumbling trigger from here. Let's go to the add trigger, and here we are going to hit new, And now what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna create a new uh, and here we will select tumbling trigger window, and that's what I was saying. Look, this is where you're gonna say start time. So in my case, remember we have data that's starting from our, let's see, right there. So you see, right, we have August 1st, right? And our end date is August 8. So this is data we have in this table, and we have data for 8 days. Now in the tumbling trigger, you can process the historical data or future data, wherever the date you want to define is your choice, right? So in my case, I'm going to go here. I'm going to say start from August 1st. And then I can define all the time and everything right here. So if I want to say 12 or something like that, so you can always set that time, and AM or PM or whatever. So in my case, I'm going to go ahead like this. And now with occurrence, reoccurrence. So if that's what I was saying, how big your window is going to be. Let me say, first of all, let's do end date. So in the end date, I can do 8 or I can do 8 9. Doesn't matter, because for the some days we don't have the data. So I don't have data for 8 9, but it's okay to, because our starting and end window will cover the whole data set. Now here, what you're gonna do now, if you want to create a, let's say, 8 windows, right, or 9 windows, so you're going to say 24, and then you're going to say 24 hours, right? So it is creating from this point to this point. For each 24 hours it's going to create one window. So if I want to create multiple windows, let's say I have a lot more data, and I want to break into small, pieces. I will say like, okay, I'll do 12 hours. Now it will create double the windows, right? So let's go with 24 for now, and then we'll see. We can come back and modify, and actually we have to recreate the trigger once we define it. We can only change the end date. We cannot change start date, recurrence, and all that. So once the trigger is published, but we can create a new one if we need to. Go to advanced, and here is the add dependencies. If you want to add some other tumbling trigger on which this our main tumbling trigger should depend, you can add that. But in my case, I don't have anything like that. In the delay, you can see that the delay before start processing the Windows start. So let's say you have defined the window, starting at like this rate, right? So if you want to add the delay, let's say if I add delay at 0.5, so every time the next window is going to start, it's going to delay for 5 minutes and then start it. So I have seconds, minutes, and hours. So I can add the windows. Maximum concurrency, like number of jobs you are going to run in parallel. So let's consider this one from 081 August 1st to August 9. Let's say for each 24 hour, if it create 9 windows, and if I would like to run all them in parallel, I can leave the 50 as it is, or put 9, then all the windows will run the pipeline. So there would be 9 copies of pipeline will run for different start date and end date. But if I want to say like, oh, let me run in the 4 and 4, right? So I will do 4, and what happened, 4 copies of pipeline will run. Once they finish, then the next 4 runs will run, and that's how it will go. So in my case, I'm gonna leave this one to the, let's say, 10, right? So it will run everything all at once. And then a retry count, if you want to retry, if the number of retries before the pipeline runs is marked as fail. So you can always put that if you are worried like your pipeline is going to fail. So you want to do that. And retry policy interval in seconds. So if you want to retry, like maybe connections manager is failing or something like that, and you want to give some like, oh, give a try again, give a try again. So you can put all those information here. Start trigger on creation. So that's what is happening. We are going to go ahead and start the trigger and run it. So now we have to provide the values. Remember that p start date and p end date, that's our parameters for our pipeline, and I have to provide the values from the trigger. So how am I going to do that? I will go to the SSMS, and I already have those 2 lines of code here. So it says at the rate trigger outputs Windows start time and end time. So remember that in the our definition we were providing start time and end time. That's what it is. So these variables are gonna get those values to this pipeline parameters. So I'm gonna say end, and we are all good here. Hit OK, and now we are gonna click on publish. Once we publish everything, the trigger is gonna start running right away. Okay, publishing completed, and now if we go on the monitoring, and here in the monitoring you will see something. You are gonna see trigger runs, and you see that all those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So these are 8 windows got created right away, and they are running. So if you see right there, each one is running a pipeline, and see right there, and the data is already copied, so you can see right there, and it tells you like how many record got copied, so for the first window. Now let's go back to the trigger runs, and here these see all those got completed right away, and you can see the time when our trigger started. It created those windows depending on our start date and end date, and depending on the reoccurrence. In our case it was 24 hours. So let's take a look here. Go to properties here and see, this is start time, and now you are seeing this is actually your trigger time, the first one, and then you have this start date right here, 7/31, 21, and then it is end is 8/1. Okay, so that's our first window. Then you have next window, you can see 8/1 to 8/2. Then you have another one, 8/3 to 8/4, and then you have 8/4 to 5 right there, and then you have 8/6 to 8/7, and then you have 8 5 to 6 and all that, right? And then you have 8/7 to 8/8. So see that this is how it will work. Now it created these windows because our reoccurrence was 24 hours. But if I go back here, and now let me go back to the pipeline. Let's go to the check the data here in the, if I run the query, and I want to see if data is copied. So you can see that we have copied the data here. Okay, and if I will say order by sale date, right? So if you want to do that, you can see it start actually from 8/2. So it start from 8/2, right? Because maybe we missed our window in that. So let's see what we had here. So it has 8/1, right? So 1 a.m. or something like that. So we missed this part of the data. So we can go back and fix it. So let's see if I want to go back and fix it. Now what will happen? I'm going to go to pipeline. I'm going to trigger, edit, and this is my trigger, right? So I can click on trigger, and here I cannot go back and make any change. So what I have to do, I'm going to go ahead and add a new trigger. So maybe I will just close this trigger. In this case, I can do a couple of things here. I can go to manage, and I'm gonna delete this trigger and recreate a new one. So right here, I'm gonna delete, and then go to the pipeline again, add trigger, new trigger, and now in this time we will just make sure we select the right windows for our time. Now hit new, and now we go back here and we say 8/1, and see, we are missing some time. That's why probably it got missed. But let's go back to the one more date, and we start from our July 31st, right? So that's the, now we should cover that time as well. We are starting there, and sorry, here is a tumbling window, and starting from there. Last time we did 24 hours. This time we will do 12 hours. So now it will be more windows created, and we are going to do hours and specify end date. End date is good. And now what we are going to do, we are all good here in the advanced. We don't have to do anything. Maximum concurrency. So this time I can put maybe 50. Then even our windows are more. Now they will fit into 50, right? Because we might have like 20 windows for this, between this date and this date, depending on 12 hours each of that. Okay, so but we are fine here, and the next what we can do, we can hit OK, and then we are going to provide that trigger values here. So right there, copy and end, and here I'm going to change this to the end date time. All good, and now we can go ahead and publish, and once we publish it, It's gonna execute. So I can delete this data actually, or just maybe leave it as it is. So I will say truncate table. Before I do that, maybe the trigger already have written the data. Okay, no, it's not. It's still working on it. So we can truncate. Okay, we go back here. Publishing error. So what is the error here? Let's see. It says tumbling trigger update not allowed. Message start time cannot be updated for tumbling trigger null. Okay, so maybe so this is the same name we have given to our trigger, and that could be the reason. So yeah, that might be the case. So we are gonna close this guy. Go back to here. Trigger. See, it was probably the same name, and that's why it was trying to update. And go to pipeline and go to triggers again. This time I'm gonna name it correctly. First of all, I should name it correctly because the same name does exist, and that's why it is creating problem, I believe. Okay, so 31st, and here I will say trigger 2. Okay, now 12 hours window, and then specify end date is good, and the advance is all good. And now I'm going to provide the value start, and here is end. Okay, so now we are going to go ahead and publish. So trigger 1 deleted, and then trigger 2 added. So that's it should do it because we were creating the trigger with the same trigger 1 name, and the edit is not allowed. So that's why it was failing. So one of the reason, if you have recreate the trigger, you can always go back and create with a new name. So that's what you're gonna do. Go back to your monitoring, and here you see that. So now it created more windows because we were saying 12 hours. So if you check here, what's happening, and that's the windows 8 1. This is the window it is creating. So between 12 hours each of that. So we cancel this out. You can go to next one. You can see that the 7:31st to the 10:58 it started, and then to the next time. So it is created for each 12 hours. Now if we can go back here, take a look, and as our concurrency was more 50, so it created all the windows and running them right away. And now you can see that all 100 rows are inserted. Last time we missed in the start time, this data for the first, I guess. So that why it was missed. But if you go back here now, if you refresh, what's going to happen? These all guys are completed. So see right there, they all started right away, and there was 24 windows were created because each was 12 hours, I believe. So you can see right there, and these are the different windows. You can see that start time, what time your trigger started, the start time for the window. So it is just for the 5 and 5. So it started from 10 a.m. to the 10 p.m. and then we have next one. So this is how it is. Okay, so I hope you learn something out of this and how to use the tumbling trigger. And one more thing, see, if you want to rerun, let's say you have some data problems with this window right here, and let's see right here. You see that, oh, I got some problem with the from 10:58 to the 10:58 a.m. to p.m. and all that between 8 and 9. So if you want to do that, like, oh, then what you can do, or any window, whatever it is right here, you can go right there and say rerun, and yes, so it's going to run that pipeline with specific window of with the that start time and end time. So if I go back here now, if let's go to the table here, and we take a look, now there should be some probably it is going to insert some extra records. See 107 records here, so it reran and inserted the extra records. This can actually create the duplicate records into your destination, but you need to understand how to use destination and source, and you might want to use data flow instead of using copy here, so you can perform upsert. So in cases that you rerun something by mistake, it will not insert the bad data or duplicate data. If so, this is all good here. If you refresh, and you can see right here it say rerun latest. So anything you will have rerun, it will change the status. So that's how tumbling trigger works. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.